All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. So we'll just get begin here itself. First, I will go ahead and just introduce a little bit quickly about myself and what iBlot is. And with that, we'll just give mic. I'll put the mic towards you, and we'll get to know a lot more about your journey, your experience from PhD to co-founder, and what inspires you to move back to India, and how you're foreseeing your startup and the journey with that. So a little bit about, India Biotech Leaders of Tomorrow. So iBlot was sort of ideated way back in 2018 when a couple of people from India biotech ecosystem sort of met each other in Cambridge. So University of Cambridge yearly organizes a global summit called GAP Summit. I believe you might have heard of it. And all the founders of the iBlot, along which is basically for the co-founders with me, we all came together into that particular meeting, and we sort of ideated something similar does not really happen for any ecosystem, and we had a couple of ideas of why it doesn't happen. And during when the COVID happened, when everyone went remote, despite all of us co-founders being entirely globally distributed, we decided to come together and start up a global Indian forum for ourselves. There's been a bit of a up and down curve with us as well, because moving calibrating everyone across different geographies and time zone. But essentially, we started running our own active Slack channel, and now we decided to move towards a more of a podcasting and publishing platform. Basically, we want to give founders and people with accomplished background in biotech ecosystem in India a voice and a platform to share their story and messages. Because I personally believe that a lot of success story isn't really narrated at a global, not even a global scale, but at a very high scale compared to what we see here about stories in tech and computer science and a couple of other areas of entrepreneurship. And so that's really what the major motivation was, because there's a lot of activity happening in biotech ecosystem, and we wanted that to bring that to the forefront. A bit about myself quickly. So basically, my name is Varshit, and I was originally an undergrad at IIT Kharagpur doing in bioengineering and biotechnology. I was wanted to do a PhD, so I went to Masters at Imperial College London into synthetic biology, the hottest field in biotech for like 20 years now. Somewhere along my master's, I kind of realized that PhD is a very, very personal and tricky affair. You should only do it when
Yeah.
you're entirely sure why you want to do it and where you want to
Mm.
end up with. It should not be an option because that's what everybody else does, or I don't know what else to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's where I had this epiphany that that's not exactly the right time. So I decided to diverge out a little to the industry, and luckily I got involved with a startup in London called Insider, where I originally wanted to join as a computational systems biologist, but as things may have to be, I ended up working more machine learning and data science, and from there I moved into data science and came back to India and started iBlot, and a couple of things happened, and now I'm here with you.
Awesome.
That's okay. So this is just
Journey.
to give you a brief about me and the iBlot. And now at this point of time, I'm really excited to yeah turn the mic towards you and inquire and learn more about your story and how you're moving forward, and what we can I want to know what your plans are with your startup in the future.
Awesome. So you've had a really good journey. I think took a quite similar journey. So I'm gonna give you a brief about how me and my co-founder met and how our journeys actually independently led us here. Um, so Pranav, who's my co-founder, and I actually did our bachelor's together, 2012 to 15, in microbiology back in Pune, Ferguson College, right? So
Okay.
yeah, we were long-standing friends, etc. And of course, the bachelor bunch always stays together. We are always in
Yeah.
touch, etc. So he took his own journey from there. He did his master's in microbiology and his PhD in biopolymer fermentation, and yeah, that's about him. I got interested in the genetic nature of microbes. So after doing microbiology, I thought that okay, I want to see what microbes do to the world and how are they pursued. And I was also very interested in food sciences and food tech, etc. So I took a year gap. I took internships in TUV Nord and places like that to understand what the hell happens and how are microbes really seen in FMCGs and other worlds. So there I realized that okay, there's a lot of scope, but just physiological identification of microbes is not enough. So you have to do something innovative in the space. Hence, I pursued my master's from IBAB Bangalore Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology, where I got into metagenomics. So my environmental microbes and biofilms, meaning a bunch of microorganisms floating around in the air, in water, and your gut, your hair, the gut brain axis, everything was raveling themselves and was the talk of the town back in 2016, right? So that really got me intrigued. one of the greatest experiments or the funnest experiments that I saw in my life was there were these two scientists from Penn State that just attached a Petri plate on their windshield and they drove around for kilometers just to see what microbes are in the air. And that kind of experiments were really catchy to me. I was just blown away, right? Luckily, I got a chance to work with one of those professors, Professor Stefan Schuster. He is an amazing scientist. He's my mentor. The guy who sequenced dinosaur genomes was top 100 most influential scientists, etc., etc., etc. Right? So we connected really well, and he gave me an offer to just come join him at NTU, and I took him up on that offer. So I actually went there for a PhD, but I never really pursued it because the thought process was exactly like yours. I love microbes, I love environmental microbes, but I always knew I was going to do entrepreneurship. There was no two ways about it. But I was just finding the correct problem statement that I feel so deeply passionate about that I will pursue it all my life with all my
Uh,
energy, right?
Okay, at this point of
Mhm.
time, it is a slight follow-up. I'm sorry to interject here. I want
Sure.
it's an interesting thing you mentioned here that, you sort of connected with Professor Stephen, and that's when he
Huh.
invited you to join at NTU. And I'm a little curious about how that, development sort of happened, because I believe that at that point of time, you're probably in India itself, right? Because my original impression was probably you went to NTU and that's how you met him. So was it like, did he
Sure.
visited IBAB and you met him in a conference, or did you just shoot
Sure.
him in cold email, or like how that development and relationship built that he was so confident that he invited you to join his lab, because that's not really a very common occurrence. So I'm just curious how
Right?
that happened to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was, I it was a blatant cold email writing about all the experiments that he had done and how, each and everything that he did had blown my mind. But I did go through a lot of his research papers and felt like there is some gap in his data collection that I could help him fill. So I didn't just go back to him with, "Hey, I like your work. I'd like to join your lab." But I actually had, I think, an insight that would add to his work, and I went there, or I started interacting with him with a particular thought process in mind that, hey, you've done this, this, and this, but why not this? Why have you like selectively chosen not to do at that time transcriptomics of the air, right? Isn't that the next natural step? Why aren't you publishing there? And then he's like, why don't you get on a call and we'll talk about this? And that's how it all started. He got a bunch of team there. We discussed how I see that there could be something else that he could do. And after going through the entire thing, he tells me, "Hey, the data's ready. Why don't you come here and analyze?" And I was like, "Shit, you thought about it?" And he's like, "Yeah," but he liked the initiative. So I guess that's how it worked out for me.
I mean, we have all heard of mystical stories like this, where you shoot a very well developed and articulated pitch to somebody very senior, and it just works out. And I
Yeah,
believe a lot of people just give up on the stage when they believe that they don't really have anything to offer and to add value and this is it. But I think it seems like a good example to illustrate. Cold email works. They just do work
yeah, both
sometimes.
skills really work.
I mean,
Yeah,
just to just not to overshadow your story, but I had a very similar but a much scaled down version. So that's really how I got my first job.
tell me
I mean,
about
since
it.
somebody who has been abroad, right? Realize it's a little difficult situation to try to get a job in, when you're on a visa status, because that always hangs over your like. And so when I did my
Yeah,
master's in UK, it wasn't particularly easy because it was right during the Brexit era. So the cultural political sentiments were already somewhat negative. Not to mention
right.
that they didn't have the policy of 2 years after the masters to work, which they have now. So they didn't have it back then when I did it in 2017 and 18. So I just went around shooting, cold emails, just LinkedIn connection messages, not even asking for anything. And then there was one guy said, I have a brother who's working with, on a, biomedical startup. We just want to have a catch up for a coffee. I said, let's go for it. Then he made up on a
Nice.
WhatsApp call. Then we met in for a coffee. Then he just asked Floats, you know what, you just want to do an unpaid internship because I can pay you right now. I was like, I don't know, nothing else to do. My master's was almost over. I'm just better than nothing, right? Something on my CV than nothing, right? Because I only had academic profiles. And then it developed into a full-time job because I did something that he enjoyed and he liked. He says he can add value, and I was willing to move to India. So the economics also kind of worked out, and it was a so that's really how I did. And it was a very, I would say it was a very good first job. Like it taught me a lot of stuff and provided me exposure that I otherwise might not have gotten just in India, or
Right.
if I would gotten a standard job. So again, not to overshadow your story too much, but yeah, to
No,
anybody who will be
on this,
listening or reading this, cold emails do work. Cold emails sometimes work, but be articulate your skills and be honest
yeah.
about what you want to do, and just don't try to spam. Please don't spam.
Please don't spam other people, and also do it with intent, right? I feel like if the intent is right, if your interests are right, if you're actually wanting to do something and you've thought about it, people realize that. Don't be the one who so every time you get on a call, go on a call with agenda, right? Add value to their time, because they're already really busy people who want to accomplish a lot, right? So don't be that energy sucker or an energy sinker. Add to it, and then you'll see the differences. And even in every single email that I type up, there's a lot of originality. I don't go the generic use the template kind of situation. You might go wrong, okay? It's hundreds of emails and to work out, but it really does. I mean, that's how I've gotten a lot and in life, just by giving it a shot, honest shot. That's it. Yeah.
I
So
mean,
thank you, right? I ended up there, worked for him for good long time. Actually, even after I started Bacalt, I was working with him, and he's very supportive. Very early on in so I had again had an honest conversation with him once I was there, and it was 1.5 years pursuing the research. And he told me that, hey, why don't you start your PhD now? You have good question problems and problem statements. Let's get you started. And I told him that, hey, Stefan, I feel like this is not the problem statement I feel deeply passionate about, though I love the work and I want to keep doing it, because back then I was working on air microbiome, and especially Delhi air pollution microbiome. So that is some topic I deeply feel passionate about, but I feel like the biotech route is not ready yet to make certain decisions or certain changes in an entrepreneurial manner. So I was very honest with him about it. And he said that, oh, great, amazing, fine, do your research. If I have an idea, we'll start a company together. That's how great he was about it. And we've always discussed ideas back and forth. Every time he comes up with a thought, he'll text me, even if it's at 3 a.m., saying, hey, have you thought about this as an idea? So that really helped. But in NTU, right, I worked in Singapore Center for Life Science and Engineering, where L'Oreal houses its biggest R&D unit in Asia. So they do a lot of R&D, and I knew a couple of people there, friends of mine, working on microbiome data. And they did come to me sometimes to understand the data set and understand the bioinformatics part of it, and see if I could help them see it, analyze it, have any inputs about it. And that's where I got into close understanding of formulations for cosmetics, oral care, etc. Right? I was just reading through the chemicals, why they're trying. So, if you're trying to see how the skin microbiome changes with one of the molecules, you want to find out what's in the formulations. And then this entire sea of problem unveiled to me. In this sea, what happens is most of your cosmetic products have microplastic causing ingredients in them, and that was quite shocking to me. I thought packaging was the problem, right? But beauty industry is completely messed up with microplastic causing ingredients. Then I read about oral care, then I read about home care, nutraceuticals, agriculture, pharmaceuticals. All of them have plastics, microplastic causing ingredients. Some help in delivery of formulation, some help in slow release, some help in longevity, some help in film forming, bulking, but a lot of problems there. So this was something that could not let me sleep at night at all. Like, this really worried me. So then I thought, this is it, this is the problem that I want to solve. And of course, you go to your bachelor friends, right, when you're doing something this neurotic, like leaving a really good job, a secure life that you've built for the past 6 7 years in a foreign country, and just quit it all to come to India, um, on a hinge that this is some place you can make a difference. So you go back to your bachelor friends and are like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And then Pranav's like, I'm just finishing up my PhD. I'm gonna come join you. Let's do this. And you were like, okay, let's start. So that's how we started building back up.
So before we move forward, like there are one or two questions that you want to ask. It's quite interesting that you went around and you just followed interesting research question without giving too much regards to in terms of will it lead to a publication or not, or will it lead to a degree or not. You were more focused on into solving a problem, understanding the data, and see what you can build on top of that. But coming back to the idea, now I'm not sure, like back in those days you were particularly sure that if you would want to start a journey, company or not. But you might have given some thought about where your career is going to go next. And since, as you mentioned, you technically didn't do a PhD, and since you already spent like 5 years during that period, didn't you feel like having a PhD might just still give you an educational advantage? Because pedigree does help in biotech ecosystem or health ecosystem when you're trying to build something. Do you have a PhD? Not it's a common question people ask. Despite the fact that you do have an equivalent research experience, but investors don't aren't always the most technical people around. So they sometimes rely on pedigree. And even if that startup wasn't going to work out, you were probably thinking of going to someplace in industry or maybe another postdoc or research position. Again, and a PhD could not make or break this, your CV and resume. Just despite the
Right.
fact that you had a technical skill. So like did you right? So what
It
was
is
the
a
meaning that yeah.
So it's a very general norm that you have to have a seal to your experience or you want people to make, you kind of want a proof of your experience, right? And PhD gives you that. PhD is a scenario where you solve different kinds of problems, right? So won't you agree that a PhD student from India would have very different learnings from a person doing PhD on the same topic in the US, right? Your learnings are not going to be the same. The fundings are different, the sourcings are different, the kind of interactions you have are different, right? A Indian PhD student is thinking about, can I afford this chemical right now? And I have to publish. So I'm just going to, have to strike a balance between how much do I spend, and the stipend here is 50,000 rupees, right? So how are you going to manage a house, have a living, God forbid if you have a family or if you're old enough, right? So the learnings of PhD in geographically are very different, right? Another thing that PhD teaches you, borderline, is to pursue a question with all angles and report what happens with it. An objective thought process of you take a problem, you understand it, if you're great, you come up with a solution. Otherwise, you just report the problem in a deeper manner, right? So I don't think PhD and entrepreneurship is very different when it comes to managing in small amounts of money, following your heart, sticking to the path, etc. But why I think the research experience I had back then was useful is I would not have found a problem statement agnostic of what I already chose. So if I stuck to air microbiome, and I wanted to understand how microbes work in the air, right, or in the environment, and I started pursuing a PhD in it, went for it for the next 6 years, right? I would not have the option to waver from the question, find something that I'm deeply, deeply passionate about later after 2 years of starting my PhD and pursue that. I would have been,
Okay.
in a way, locked out, right? So I don't think I was in the phase to start that commitment issue or whatever you call it, but
Yeah, so that does make sense to me. So let me try to rephrase because this was quite curious to me. Because you did spend like around 5 years, it's the equivalent time of doing a PhD approximately, and you were fully funded. So it seems like a very logical thing to just get an accreditation as well, right? It would have just come across. But from what I understand, that's what you were aiming there was to have a lot more independence in terms of what experiments and the projects that you can pursue. And a doctoral thesis would have been really shackling you to a specific research questions because then that's really how you have to frame your story. You can't really put together, five different kind of experiments and publications and then put together a doctoral thesis. It needs to have a story, right? It needs to build into something and lot more depth. And as you realize that, so from what I understand, since you haven't traced it, but this is what I assume you must have done there, that instead of just working with, one specific problem with Professor Stefan, you might have collaborated with multiple PhD students and might even people outside of his lab to work out a different
exactly.
problem statement and see, what,
That's
I find this
my
interesting. I have the skills. Let me just do this for you. Let me do this out for you and get a lot more diverse exposure in terms of what is happening. And
absolutely.
eventually you found something that strike a chord with you because that seems like a very, an intuitive thing. If not a PhD, that is
100%.
why you would have been doing that. Yeah.
Because I was so clear on my dreams for entrepreneurship. I was there to understand what is the scope of microbiome, how deep or how wide are microbes. So, from analyzing data for L'Oreal, for the known gut microbiome, for lung organoids for Dr. Sanjay Chotramal, for ancient microbiomes in Zurich, to Imperial College London. Actually, we collaborated quite a lot with Professor Matthew Fisher, if you know him from Imperial College.
Unfortunately,
Um,
no. Yeah.
okay, so
I'm
yeah,
sorry, I'm a
he's
little
someone.
spindling around because I had to attach the charger to the laptop. I forgot to do that
No
part
problem.
earlier. Sorry, yeah,
No, that's okay.
it's all set.
Yeah. So
Sorry, yes,
so that
please
gave
continue.
me no, that's okay. So that gave me a very wide perspective, and it really helped me understand the extent of microbes and find my problem statement. So if people are lucky enough that they found their problem statement early on in their lives and they knew this is what they want to address with their PhD, great. But my entire process was to look for that one question I would solve via the entrepreneurial route and not the academic route. So that's why I chose to do this. Understand the microbes, just get to know what they do. That's about it. Mhm.
Okay,
But you
fair.
know why? Pranav was anchored to a PhD, right? Pranav developed expertise in production and his PhD was in biopolymer fermentation. So that's why we make sense as co founders, because I know the extent of markets we can push our products in, because I know where microbes are acceptable and how we can play with it. But Pranav knows how to keep a factory functioning that will keep manufacturing the products that we want to. So I think it's a very you have to make a very good team that give you complementarity when it comes to things like these, especially when you want to build up an industry that is biotech driven.
Okay. So let me just clear this, understanding here. So what Pranav brings to the table essentially is the more hardcore experimental skill set in terms of bacterial polymer and scaling up of that biomanufacturing. And the thing that you bring around is not more, computational and the overall data start of the story where
And
you know
engineering.
what the problems to attack. And then also potentially to more the other bureaucratic or let's just say exciting elements of entrepreneurship, such as, funding and licensing and discussions, and not to mention legal aspects of it. I think that's really the breakdown of responsibilities between the two of you there.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. I mean, that's great to have a complementary skill set with somebody that you have a lot more background and history to going back. I mean,
Exactly.
it's pretty common in an ID circuit, obviously, that you hear about a story that batchmates or even rather weighing measures used to live two rooms down the block and came together in this form a company, and some of them become like a
Exactly.
very very popular company. I do hope and wish that a lot more of those stories would be essentially in health tech and biotech as well. But and I think it's really where we're going to move towards the next phase of the conversation as well. Starting a company in India and sort of a experimentally capex heavy domain, and how do you go about it, what motivates you,
Mhm.
and how you get started, and all the other nitty gritty and nuances of it. So yeah,
Awesome. Because we were talking about co-founders, right? One of
yeah.
I just want to tell you this one thing that was my metric about why it has to be Pranav. So we're very different people. He's a shy, quiet guy. He was the teacher's pet. I was the one who was thrown out of the class more often than not because of, questioning the teachers or whatever, whatever, right? So back in the day, Pranav and I did have a conflict. General bachelor's fight, pata nahi, I don't even remember what. But the way we bounced back from a conflict and it was like we were best friends again, that was one of the biggest motivating thing that where I knew that it has to be Pranav. Because when you co-found something, arguments, and especially when you're two deep tech founders, like the way we design experiments or with the way we look at outputs and outcomes are so different that if you have someone with whom you have mad conflicts and you're okay to openly say that no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, we think about it, we have to come back and work it out, but in the evening just go have a beer and laugh it out. I think that was one of my biggest metric, how easily we bounce back from conflicts. I think that's one of the things about finding a co-founder for me. So that was great. I was very
I, I,
lucky.
I think, I mean, the trust and the capacity to resolve conflict and understanding is probably that's what you're hinting here as the absolute pertinent that you were interested in beyond the technical skill sets. And I think there's my and if I can judge correctly, you would have been okay with a differentiation in technical skill set. He may or may not have specialized in exactly this area, but that would have been fine. But the most important thing is there a problem statement that you can work together for a very long period of time? Because essentially, starting this kind of a company is not, 1 year, 2 years kind of investment. Essentially, you're at least thinking somewhere between 6 to 10 years of your
Yes.
life journey for this to pay off, and that's a significant investment. And something
Yes.
that you will only get to do this probably once or twice as a shot in your life. So why waste it with someone you're not fully comfortable with? After all,
Right.
sometimes I mean, something that you learn in research a lot. Of something this is even I become quite hard to become okay with it. And sometimes, I'm okay with it, and a lot of people around me get unsettled because they haven't worked in research. You got to enjoy the process, and you got to
Yeah.
have faith in what you're doing. You cannot
Mhm.
control the result. You can have a very optimistic hypothesis, and you go around and then you search for it and you realize it just doesn't work. And you've invested maybe millions of dollars sometimes on an experimental work. Things
That's
things
okay.
cost a lot. and you got to be okay with the fact that the research line just didn't pull off. You just have to be able to enjoy the experience and feel that it was meaningful despite the end results. And I think that's probably what you are hinting in terms of, what your North Star has been as well. You don't know
Yeah.
it's going to work out entirely or not, but it should feel a worthwhile endeavor and shouldn't look back and say, I shouldn't have done that.
And you also have to be thrifty enough. I feel like when you're running an experiment, any and every data point is crucial. If it fails, it fails, but it teaches you a lot. So you can actually capitalize on experimental failures when it comes to biotech. So if I was expecting a result to go one way, that means that I have an inkling or I've read about it in the past. But if it's performing exactly the opposite, that means there's something new that people have not read about, which is great. So as far, just don't be attached to the outcome, just let it come to you. And I feel like if you really lean on the experimental data and scientific results, you will learn something, and you can capitalize on it. So no matter what the results, at least we enjoy the journey, but don't forget to log the data. Get the
Yeah,
data. That's it.
yeah, log the data. Yeah.
Log.
So many scoldings have happened for a miswritten lab notebook. This is
Yes.
how you write a
It,
lab notebook? Is this how
I
you write a
never.
lab notebook? Has your PI taught you nothing?
Oh God, I was there's this Japanese fellow in NTU, in Stefan's lab, right, in our lab, who actually gave me a one-on-one session for hours as to how to write a lab notebook. That's how shabbily I used to write it, but I was so well trained by him. He's like, "No, you write it again. No, you write it again." And now I do the same to my people. So okay, fine. But it's good. So coming back to
Yeah,
your point about Bacalt and capex heavy investments in biopolymers, right?
yeah.
So what angle would you like to talk about first?
I think, there's a lot of, different threads I can pull around here, but we'll also be having interest of time as well eventually. So the things that I'm most, particularly interested in is like, how did you sort of, you know, it's an interesting thing to wake up at night and think, I want to start a company on this, and you talk to your friend. But it's an entirely different business. So, go actually take that leap, come back to India from Singapore, and initialize it, understand, and start identifying, where you're going to scout a lab space, which city you're going to be situated in, how you're going to find the funders, what amount of money do you need, how you're going to go about hiring, and all the other legality aspects of the same thing. So really, what was sort of your starting point? How did you found, some mentors with the same thing? So this is really sort of, what, and now I'm more interested in a more, let's just say, your specific of this journey, how you are able to transition from,
Great.
just a scientist to an entrepreneur, and more, nuances around it.
So let's get into it. IBAB, Institute of Bioinformatics and Applied Biotechnology, is where, have you heard about the startup String Bio? LLC
Yes.
Bayan, one of the best startups that came in biotech, especially that came out of Bangalore or India now. Um, when I was studying here, 2016 to 18, doing my master's, she had only just begun her journey 2 years ago. So she was incubated in IBAB, and she also was an entrepreneur who actually worked in a Nobel laureate's lab back in Silicon Valley, and then she'd come back to Bangalore. And I saw her journey for whatever 2 years that I had there, and the resilience in her walk, the way she, being a scientist, commanded a room full of lawyers to, or patent attorneys to do what she wanted. That was something that I had some I had the opportunity to look through the doors or hear about her, etc. So when she actually was one of the people, without her even knowing it, and now she's our advisor, lucky us. She did something to me mentally, where the ceiling was broken. There was no ceiling above my head when I saw her journey, right? So even I wasn't aware of that. That happened very subconsciously. So when I thought this through, and we found the problem statement, when I started building around the solution, but now the solution has to solidify. So where do we go? Which lab? Where, right? So a no-brainer to me came that why don't you do it at IBAB? You've seen they harbor people. Bangalore Bioinnovation Center was only being formed at that time. So I just called up my older professors, the dean of academia, the directors of IBAB. I just gave them a call and said that, okay. So before going to NTU, the ex-director of IBAB, his name is Dr. Yatindra. He told me that, hey Shruti, your spirit looks entrepreneurial. I will write you a personal. I'll write a personal letter to Wharton to get you in. Why are you pursuing research? Why don't you pursue MBA? And back then, 2018, I told him that I will come back to entrepreneurship, but I want to find a question first. Um, and then finally, 6 years later, I sent him an email that you were right. I cannot shake it off. I want to come back. Can you help? And the minute I landed, my professors had kept a small lab space for me ready. That sit here, think about it, tell us what you need, and we will guide you. So what happened was, when you go back to your people, you tell them that you need help to change your life or achieve your dream. They see that you want to do it with sincerity and humility. Everyone helps you. And that's what happened to me. I was really, really lucky. Pranav was from NCL. So there was Venture Center, one of the greatest, like BBC, one of the incubation centers are in NCL, Pune, where Pranav and I are from. And we did have this thought that should we start it in NCL or should we start it in Bangalore? But we chose Bangalore simply because of the kind of people and the support we got in from the institutes, from IBAB. Dr. Jitendra Kumar, who's now MD of BIRAC, was the director of BBC then. So he really supported us. My rents were all time low. They gave me an accommodation in one of those staff quarters to make sure that I'm comfortable and I can just focus on work. So that really, really helped. I feel like Indian startup ecosystem is not appreciated enough, or the role of academia is not appreciated enough in Indian ecosystem, especially startup related. But it's about time we give them like some credit. They really help.
Definitely. I mean, DBT and Biorack has been the cornerstone of literally every single startup that has come around. I mean, for me, again, not to take too much, shadow
Sure.
away, light away from your story here, but I mean, being coming from the IT circuit, I mean, there's a lot of people interested in entrepreneurship, and many people are starting it on. But unfortunately, due to the allure of the VC money, eventually everyone sort of end up into the more let's just say lucrative and a bit more digital, arena of startups. I myself
Correct.
have been a little sort of guilty of that one way or the other, end up, getting perhaps sometimes due to the higher, salary or higher incentives, etc., etc.
Right.
But I've always sort of tried to stay connected to, the biotech ecosystem overall, because something during, in my personal journey, I do see that, a couple of years down the line, I do want to be involved very, very heavily and be able to contribute more to it. And I've got a sort of one small way to, get started with it. But I mean, the contribution of Biorack is like very, very understated. They do not, like, a lot of
Beautiful.
people do not realize. I mean, they all talk about, in a more hyper capitalist space, what government only just comes into the way. I mean, you should come around and see the good quality of work Biorack has done and the collaboration they've done with the industry to put together Able and, and catapult so many different startups. It's actually the more, quote unquote venture capitalists who are sort of dropping the ball when it comes to, being actually funding it and, taking it to the next level.
Absolutely. And the risk they take on you for your ideas, for your thought processes, just simply because you've applied a fifth time and they're like, okay, this woman really wants to do something. Let's just give her a chance, right? They're not as opportunistic as venture capitals, but I get the point. The model is completely different. No shade on VCs, but their goal to invest in a startup is very different than Bayrak's goal, right? Bayrak is also about elevating India, or doing something for the country, right? So it is these government institutions like Elevate 100 grant from Karnataka. We've won C camps, we've won entrepreneurship and residence. So what happens is, this is what helped us bootstrap our company for the past 2 years. It really helped. Yeah. So now here we are, TRL 7, MVPs developed, products delivered to companies, strategic partnerships done, purchase orders received. Now we go to the VC world to take money, right? So we get the respectable valuation that we want, and we've de-risked a lot of things for VCs use with the help of Buyback. So it really works out in the ecosystem. You just have to take their help at the right time.
Okay, so we were, talking about how you went ahead and, sort of use the IBAB as a foundation to get started, do your proof of concept, and, do initial prototyping, get a little bit, you applied to a couple of different grants, and then, got the initial investment, de-risk some of the original ideas, and now you're sort of moving forward to, get to the VCs. So, a couple of follow-ups here, and to understand overall the space, like, what exactly is sort of your product proposition right now? Like, what exactly are you doing? I get the high level idea that, from what you said until now is that, there's a lot of microplastic inducing materials that get introduced into a variety of different products. And for better or worse, have plastic is inevitable for a lot of reasons because it's kind of a very good return on value for money in terms of why you do it. Unfortunately, it has a very long-term hazard, but it's a really good return on value. That's one of the reasons we are unable to really remove it away. So I think that's the kind of the problem statement you're trying to target here. So if you praise your product as something that is like a bioplastic, would that be a correct, definition, or is there something else that how you would like to define your product?
Uh-huh. We actually, okay, bioplastic in a way, but okay, let's find the problem statement here, right? Who are we trying to replace? Plastics. Why are plastics famous and why are they inevitable and unavoidable? Like you said, they're malleable, they can become anything. You want it in solid form, done. Liquid, transparent, opaque, thin, thick. I mean, you want to tear it apart, you can. You want it in a foam form, you can. So basically, that one polymer can become anything. It's a platform. Plastic is a platform, and you can play around with it. That is something that we knew was going to happen. Like we knew that about plastic. So then Pranav and I, because there's a lot of options for biopolymers. Yeah, there's so many biopolymers we could work on. So how do you narrow down on polymers that you think and you believe will succeed? So that is the thought process Pranav and I applied in choosing the biopolymers. Uh, Pranav had gone through that journey in his PhD. That's why he chose one of the biopolymers, polygamma glutamic acid. And we wanted to do two biopolymers because two is better than one. I don't know why we did that. It's very, very difficult, but okay. I had a candidate in mind, which was bacterial nanocellulose, and Pranav had a candidate in mind, which was polygamma glutamic acid. Bacterial nanocellulose is it's cellulose, like plant cellulose, but it's the purest form of cellulose on earth. It's completely biocompatible. It is a tree-free fiber. You can eat it. You can put it on your wound without having to worry. It's grass, like generally recognized as safe by US FDA. Great, but it's water insoluble. When it comes to PGA, biocompatible, edible, grass, but water soluble. So then we thought, so these guys do a lot of things. Bacterial nanocellulose is the best Pickering emulsifier out there. Polygamma glutamic acid is one of the best chelation agents out there, hydration agents out there, right? So, but they also form films and they're also thickeners. So you get where I'm going, right? So the more you read about these biopolymers, you understand that they are also shape shifting. They can also become a lot of things, but to do one up to plastics, they are also actives. So not only will PGA help you form a great film on your product and also give it viscosity or rheology, which is very crucial in cosmetics, but it will also remediate your water. So India on an average spits 1.8 billion grams of plastic in the sink every year simply by using the toothpaste that are available on the counter, right over the counter. Now this goes in the soil, sorry, in the water, and then you finally see that every packet salt and sugar of India has microplastics. Not 99%, I'm saying 100% has it, right? The research, the study just came out. And that's when you wonder that the cyclic nature is always going to happen. But when I put PGA as opposed to plastics in my formulation, it remediates water. It is known to remediate water. So it will make heavy complexes with big complexes with heavy metals, and it will chelate it. So the water becomes pure. So this is the added functionality that we're speaking of. You can't beat plastic with costs. You cannot, right? But you can beat them with functionality, and that's the thought process we went on with. So our entire book is, we give you two polymers. They have really different strengths. They can replace plastics in certain forms, sure, but what else do they give you? And we give you that, right? So you've heard about this company Minimalist, right? Or you noticed the kind of branding that happens around
Now, the
food,
marketing company
or
by Chirag and Sahil, I believe. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you see the kind of marketings that they do. um, Only these many ingredients, there's only this and nothing more. That's the kind of leverage or edge we give the companies who use our products, because they don't have to buy 50 different things to perform one function. Our products are multifunctional, and at the end of cycle, right? When we were using plastics, we didn't think about end of cycle, right? We should not make that mistakes again. Not all bioplastics are completely biodegradable, right? Some of them have to be degraded in water, some of them have to be degraded in soil. So you also have to think about what is the end of life cycle for my plastics and my bioplastics, so mine turn out to be beneficial at the end of life cycle. So this is what helped us decide that okay, these are the two polymers we definitely want to work with. But then comes a problem statement that currently, if you buy from Sigma Aldrich, PJ is going to cost you around 20,000 rupees for 10 mg. Bacterial cellulose goes for around $8 per gram. So that's not competitive. That's not a competitive landscape for plastics at all, even no matter what functionality you provide. So then you go back to building and think, how am I going to make these cheaper? So then that's when we started formulating processes or manufacturing techniques to get these price really really low. So we're the only biopolymer company or startup in our ecosystem that manufactures two biopolymers with the same input feed with this at the same time. So that brings our capex opex really low.
Okay, so those are some interesting points you made, and now like I've got very, very scintillating questions to come back to.
Sure.
This is something I wanted to get back toward the end of the call, but since you brought an interesting point, that is about you can't beat plastic on cost, because I was really wondering about this, that like is there a way you're going to make it competitive in terms of pricing, in terms of plastic? But as you said upfront, that's exactly not going to happen. There's a reason plastic's still inevitable, because it's
Yeah,
so cheap. Every sabzi wala, every guy, every washer, everybody can afford it, right? And give it away for free. In India, where nobody
correct.
likes to give things for free, everybody just gives you polythene back for free. It's that
For
cheap.
sure.
It's
Yeah,
that cheap, right? So I mean, since brings it around, and I like the point that you've made around, in terms of winning over the functionality, and given the the how the plastic has become the immortal enemy of all of environmental woes. There's a lot of sentiment around it. But
correct.
coming back to a country like India, there's one thing to talk about it, another thing is to put your money where your mouth is, right? And
Uh,
this sentiment
uh,
might get reflected in terms of how we are going to interact as well. Because what I didn't get to learn right now is that on an immediate basis, how will a end consumer be able to see the value, at least in terms of their finances, of how using this particular polymer or not? Because there's a value to say that instead of spitting out your toothpaste that ends up creating a lot of microplastic that is going to hurt you, and your insurance premiums are going to go high, and you're going to get sick, and your babies are not going to have healthy life, which is like 10, 15, 20, and who knows, because it's going to be a statistical fluke as well. Some people are going to live a healthy lifestyle
for
despite all
sure.
the microplastics, and some people won't. This is something not very visible to people. But what is going to be visible
Right.
to them very quickly is the amount of money and the inflation they're going to feel once this kind of product comes around, compared to a plastic that comes around. And this is also a question. VCs might also be interesting because they also always talk about scale and how much the market can grow. And there is definitely a market for in rich urban elite or doing sustainable shopping. But as you might have noticed, a lot of sustainable products are very expensive, which makes them
Yeah.
unsustainable to begin with. It's
Right.
a bit of a circular logic, and and we see this hang that is happening. Sorry, I think this is a bit of a technical glitch on my side. I hope I'm
Yeah.
back here. All right. Yeah, so I was making the point that, since you said a functionality, how do you plan to communicate to both the investors as well as the consumers who can be very, very financially focused? And really, how can you think that, can you present your case that it's not just beating on functionality, but overall will be a valuable, economical gain as well? Because unfortunately, for whatever reason, when chips are down, the only thing people think about is the economy, inflation. I mean, I think not to get political, but religion is the only other thing that's blindside people. But that's not where we're going to
Right.
go here. And so in
And
terms of that, right? Yeah.
Mhm. No, I do
Is,
completely agree with you. These are the questions we definitely get, and it's foolish to say that no, the economy is going to be fine. People will play. That is just delusional, right? The truth of the matter is, when there are surveys done where you ask the question, hey, do you want sustainable products? Do you not want? Do you want microplastics in your breast milk? The answer is going to be no, 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 no. But would you pay for it? That also is a no, right? So one great thing that came out recently through EU is EU has now banned the sale of microplastics, solid and liquid forms, in personal care products, so rinse of cosmetics, agriculture, detergent, lip care, oral care, eye care, etc., starting 2028 up to 2035. So they've given a good transition period for us to find different products or alternatives to microplastics, right, in these ingredients. But because this is starting 2028, people are going to have to pivot to newer solutions. So this mandate, this EU mandate, is something that has gotten us customers. Great. So we already are prototyping for something that's going to come up quite quickly. And because this is cosmetic world or hair care or PCCP world, you have to start prototyping today so that you can mass market in 4 years. So customer side satiated simply because of the regulatory pressure. Right. Then comes the VC aspect of it, right? So now the VC aspect of it, we convince them with our tech. Now, say one of the things that we compete with when it comes to ingredients, right? A is carbomers. Now, the cost of carbomer is anywhere between $5 to $25 per kg. So if you go to lower end of products, they are going to be using cheaper quality plastics, right, with more impurities. But if you go to a higher value or high shelf product, the carbomers or the plastics are also going to be purer, right? So there is quite a room to play around with there. So obviously I'm not going to compare with the $5 carbomers, I will be comparing with the $25 carbomers. Now, because these carbomers are not going to add a lot of functionality, right? So then the companies are going to end up buying stabilizers so that the plastic stays stable. Another thing, or they would be buying, what do you call it, they want to make emulsifiers, because you want to make the oil water emulsion and make sure that the product quality is great. You're going to want to add active ingredients like humectants, etc., and then the cost eventually adds up. So, when you make a functionalized product at your lab end, you convince people that they don't have to buy multiple, or they don't have to procure from multiple angles. And this is something we see absolutely agree and understand with. They know that the market has to shift to green alternatives because there are simple regulatory bans now. They know that biomanufacturing or bio investment fermentation industry, precision fermentation especially, is going to boom up in the future. So when they invest in a company like ours, they don't see us as a two product pony, right? What they know that they're investing in is a platform. Today we're brewing and deploying these two biopolymers, right? But we're scientists, we're going to keep developing newer products and newer alternatives to plastic over time. So they're basically investing in an entire platform where it is asset and capex heavy once, but the kind of technology and products that come out of the same machine over time is going to be very beneficial. Another thing that we keep explaining to the VCs is how sector agnostic we make our products. So the same plastic, if Tupperware sells it, which is BPA free and can be microwave safe, is expensive, but the polythene is the one that is used as bags, right, is much much cheaper. So if you can also bring out this sector agnostic range in your product where it can go to this shelf and be just this functional, but it also can go here to make this difference, like wound healing, tertiary degree burns, suture sewing, etc., then you have higher margins there. Lower volume, high. So two kinds of game, right? High value, low volume, and the opposite. So we play both of that. So that really helps VC gain, more and more interest and trust in our product.
Okay, so let me paraphrase so that I have understood, your positioning correctly here. So what you're saying to the VCs, this is capex and operationally expensive endeavor to begin with. There is no, let's just say side waving or, scooting around it. That's a fact. But what you're suggesting is that, once you have it and you are able to initially develop, the generate the brand goodwill and you were able to build a, proof of, products that actually work, then you will be able to have necessary revenue influx to start experimenting and start expanding your horizon to different polymers and different things that may or may could be used for different potential purposes. Right now things that you're talking about is like maybe it could be a biopolymer used in toothpaste or maybe something for water packaging, but that might expand something to for maybe potentially for drug release, new kind of pharmaceutical packaging that comes around and etc. etc etc. Or you could potentially move into packaging of nutraceutical jellies as well, which is a big thing right now, and maybe you can build some sort of a polymer that can come around. I think this is really sort of the direction that you're positioning themselves to. There are two questions, and these are going to be a little challenging one, and not to take it into a more discourteous tone. Uh, so the idea of bioplastics has been around for a couple of years. I mean, I remember when we were discussing our iGEM projects. I'm sure you must have thought about iGEM as well once upon a time. This kind of ideas came around. And it was exciting. Build some sort of a bacteria that that decontaminates the arsenic pollution into the system, or build bioplastics. Some which comes around. And I think a couple of different labs and maybe independent companies that might have come across the globe. How do you foresee, what's the sort of a differentiation that you think? And for better, I don't know, not definitely not for better, but for worse, I don't think that they have become mainstream. I'm not sure how successful they are right now, but for let's assume that they are not like completely influentially successful, and there's some sort of structural reason. It could be technical, it could be a business, it could be regulatory. So what do you think? Is there a game-changing point right now? Do you have like, it's still something that you're super confident about, or something that is something you're still shaky about, that this is the right time, right place, and you are the right team and the right people to absolutely build this, because that's sort of the comparison I'm sort of thinking about. Bioplastics stock has been around for a couple of years, right? What's the difference now?
Uh-huh. So, first, when you were paraphrasing, I want to tell you that it's not a story of it could. The polymers that we've chosen already are being used in, say, surgical uses or a
Okay.
wider range of applications. So, it's not a matter of uh, if and when. It's a matter of how fast or what is the priority list. So we've started tackling the markets where the regulatory approval is the quickest. So
Okay.
by the time, so like right now, we're prototyping detergents and hair care products, but parallelly we're also getting certified for agricultural biostimulant or fertilizer synergist. So you just have to deploy the certification and regulatory approvals at different times, and in the next 5 years you will be making revenue from all different streams using the same biopolymers. That's the thought when I said that the basic point was, let's choose a biopolymer that is so malleable that can be anything and anywhere, right? So that helps. The second point that you came to is that yes, biopolymers have been spoken about for generations now, and I'm not even kidding, because bacterial nanocellulose and polygamma glutamic acid are 200-year-old biopolymers. The first research article came about 1886. Yeah, that's when it was published. That's how old they are. And yes, there has been an adaptive difference, or adoptive difference to be more accurate, about these biopolymers. And that is simply because of the costs, right? We haven't really applied crazy amount. Okay, so it's like, if you have this thing where plastic is satiating all your needs, it's very difficult to uh, it is very, actually, it wasn't a question to be chased this aggressively for the past decades, but it is now, right? Because more and more and more research studies are pointing towards the harmfulness or damages of plastic. That wasn't the case 2 decades ago. So the way we want to now commercialize or make these biopolymers accessible is more aggressive, more driven, more like put every bit of energy that you have in replacing plastic. That is the revolution that we did not see before. Yes, iGEM applications and trying to see if this model system works, that is the base of us. So today when we go to our venture capitalists or investors to explain to them what our polymer does, we don't have to do anything. All we have to do is, here are 100 research articles that were published by 100 scientists saying this product works here, 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 and that really solves our problem. But then now we have the time to address one and only one question: can we scale it up? Can we mass produce? Can we do it for cheap? That's it. So I think this is for the first time people are looking from that thought process. We've dissociated bioplastics as a luxury, as a microbial product, as something that is also high tech. We've just overly simplified it now, and we only want to manufacture. So I think we will be seeing a grand shift, and there will be a lot of change in the costings, the production technologies. Synthetic biology has come in that really helps the researchers, MD simulations predicting what's going to happen, AIML to just predict the outcome of the experiments and not really spend so much in the experiments, has really changed the way we want to look at things. So I do believe that we this time, because of the rigor, we have the chance. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So that does invite, one or two interesting questions as well. These have been in my mind for a couple of minutes now. So from what I have guessed until now, I think it seems like your first point of customers acquisition is right now seems to be Europe, where there's a lot more, energy and activity towards, moving towards greener alternatives. I think they are probably the most promising compared to anybody else. India,
We sure. No, we did make sure that even if we will go to the European market, we have made sure that they design some product for the Indian market, and we're looking into some detergents kind of work in Indian market. So one of the problem statements that we don't like, actually, I'm thinking if I want to talk about it right now, but okay, let me
oh,
patent
that's
it first
fine.
and then I'll
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah,
But
definitely. I can understand about the NDAs and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but we
This is in
definitely
Alpine, yeah.
have it too. I mean, it's not so. One of the issues, right? If people could understand that we as startups have to take some hit on the margins, so we do a PMF and make sure that our products go out. But I think the L'Oreals, the BSFs, and the Henkels of the world should also learn to take some hit on their margins just so we can deliver sustainably. But okay, that's a pipe dream, but one can
I
dream.
mean, it's a tricky business. I have my own independent opinions about that, and I mean, someone who has sort of worked in an early stage, deeply invested VC backed companies, and the kind of expectation they come around, it can get a little difficult. And for the big companies, I mean, not to absolve them from the blame entirely, but the fact is the Wall Street is brutal. I mean, one quarter the earning goes down, and everybody just scapegoat it like anything. So there's a
Right.
lot of clashing incentive. Not to mention the people who head these companies are typically very old and they kind of live their
That's
life. So some of these things,
yeah,
long-term investments may not be very, conducive or, to be like, what, do we really have to
right.
care about it? Right. So, I mean, again, this is a bit of a, my, let's
Yeah,
say, bit
worldview.
of
Yeah.
a vocal criticism, open criticism, what couple of things. But coming back to the ground reality here, and one or two points I do want to mention because this something that we are discussing on those lines, but I haven't really gone into the detail and the painful nerve about it, and something that happens in India quite a bit. I remember I was in, back in the Cambridge conference I was talking about, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw came as a guest speaker, and one thing she talked about is that when they first started Biocon, and they went to the, they built their products, and they went to the Indian doctors and to the regulators and everyone. They had a lot of, vocal distrust around, something being manufactured in India and to be of competitive quality. And she had to go and get approvals from FDA and European market first, and that's when the trust came around. Now, she did mention that the landscape has changed in India, and now doctors don't necessarily always ask for FDA because approval before they pitch their own drugs to the. But is there similar challenge that you have faced in your journey where you feel like until you get Western European validation and US validation, the Indian companies or Indian regulators are somewhat more, let's say, the word I'm looking for is skeptical of what you're doing, or you're just independently able to go to them, and how your experience with Indian regulators in particular has been. Like, has it been smooth? How has it journey has been? And I can understand if you would might want not want to be too public in case the conversation
No, that's
isn't
fine.
necessarily very, yeah.
Absolutely fine. Very public about it. So I feel like somewhere down the line, right? We do waste to wealth conversion. So we do pick up agro-industrial waste and then we convert it into a biopolymer. So it is nasty. Of course, agro-industrial waste is nasty. It's not going to smell like perfumes or like, Chanel number 5. That's not what the lab smells like. And Indians have this, ew, I'm not going to touch it. Actually, everyone in the world does have that mindset. But when we talk about our work in countries outside of India and products that come out of it, right? There is a certain level of respect that is there to the kind of work we do. When it comes to the ecosystem here, I'm not even going to lie. People have gone to a level where they call us kachra wala because we pick up waste to develop it into great products and help them, right? So yeah, there are different kinds of connotation. There's a lack of trust. There is looking down on people who are working with things that normal people would not touch. It's so difficult to hire here in such a landscape, right? So I feel like, yeah, somehow Indians really got mal westernized, for a lack of a better word here, where these things are not
Um,
okay.
I mean, I understand, but just in the interest of time, if I may just point towards specifically towards, the regulators and the potential customers here, because what you're talking about is more of a general public perception. And I understand there could be some remark, there's lot of room for, re-education and sort of relearning there. But specifically when you talk about, potential customers, say like, maybe an agricultural client or a pharma client or, maybe a
Ah,
wastewater treatment client, when you go to these, these potential clients, do they still ask for in terms of your validation of the quality of your tech based on how it is being received global internationally, or do they just look at the work you're doing on their own terms and on their own due diligence and come to the conclusion? And what about the regulators
um,
as well?
absolutely, Indians now do their own due diligence, everything. They really trust our process. They just come to our lab, understand what we're doing, read our documents, experiments, and absolutely take a decision based on their part of it. Indians genuinely believe they're better at business than anyone else, which is great. I mean, they are, right? So no, they keep now. There is no requirement of me name dropping any European clients that we have just so I can convert a client here. That doesn't happen at all. If anything, we have to fight with people outside of India because they think anything you manufacture in India is going to get to them for so cheap. So that's a different fight that we have to fight. But no, I think Make in India was a movement that a lot of people really support. And as far as the tech is good, as far as we have good documents showing how these things are working, they are way happy to incorporate in India than get us validated or sealed from anyone outside. No,
And that's
absolutely.
actually amazing and brilliant to hear, because I think this probably could be a very important statement to anybody who comes back to this particular discussion, both in the published and maybe the video format as well. Because a lot of people sort of give up in believing that maybe in India this can't happen. You just have to go outside and get external validation to make things happen. I mean, the fact that you know
Yeah,
the support as from both the the academic, the investment, as well as the sort of most importantly the customer side is recognition is coming that in-house Indian made product can be competitive, and it's worthwhile to invest into technologies and not just look for the cheapest to build highest margins. That's definitely encouraging. One more question that I have been in my mind for a couple of minutes now. It's like something about, and this could be a more faster question to wrap up. Uh, how how are you able to sort of differentiate your technology overall? Now, I do not have a lot of experience in biofermenters, and bioprocess technology was one of my weakest subjects back in the day, so I'm really bad at it. But since a lot of people have been working on these kind of technologies for years, like how are you able to find your own niche which does not infringe on anybody's prior patent? Because I mean, there's a whole different conversation on patent words. People don't patent because they had a great idea. They people patent because they can disallow anybody else to work on the similar stuff. Like so, how do you sort of tiptoe around it and make sure that your patent gets done and it's approved, and it's not going to infringe on existing technology? Because if that happens even by a slightest mistake, then your entire business model can just collapse like overnight, literally. And those kind of things have
exactly.
happened in this industry.
Right.
So
Right.
like, yeah.
Great question. So the first part of it, I'll just address the patent part of it first. Yes, it becomes really difficult to come up with a technology that has not been worked out before, especially when it comes to polymers that are 200-year-olds, right? But if you really, really study the so gap filling is not going to do the job, because that, again, you will be infringing on somebody else's patent, or there will be something that you miss. But when you go through people's patents, when you understand what all have they done, you come to realize that a lot of patents are just laundry list. They've just mentioned a name, no data given, just to lock it up. That doesn't fly anymore. You have to do a lot of due diligence. You have to do an entire landscape analysis. You have to do you know patent searches, like you have to see patentability searches. So what we did was, we it was painful, it is quite expensive an event, but we did allocate some amount of money. And actually, Birac also gives you a lot of money to help you with patent work. Get a good lawyer, understand the landscape of the products that you're building, get data, be data driven to that angle. That when you have a landscape analysis right in front of you, it's basically 100 Excel sheets, where every place your product is mentioned, every patent your product is mentioned in, is going to be in the table. What did they use it for? When was it? Is it an active patent? How did they use it? Everything, right? So once you have that landscape in your mind, and you start thinking of okay, this, but why not this? And then that there is always this, why have they not thought about this? And once you answer that, that's it, that's your patent. And that also creates a very big moat. So Errol from Sting Bio again. There's this one. She has done around 14 patents now, I guess. So one of the biggest things she taught me was, don't go crazy about getting the number of patents. Go crazy about the differentiator or the moat that you create between every other patent and your patent. Always remember that the competition is right here. So you have to push your tech to such a level that even if you completely publish your work for people to see in a patent form, they would never be able to touch you. So patenting takes a lot of intelligence. Before just getting on this call, I actually was bickering with my patent attorney, and I was like, no, you read it like that, so all that. But I do agree that that is some really narrow territory. It takes a lot of homework. It takes dedicated data driven question and answering. And hey, if it's patented, it's patented, it's okay, you can think about something else. It did take us some time. Our most loved and groundbreaking product was just formed 3 months ago, and we're happy, because if we had settled for anything less, we would not have this really, really good product. So I feel like, go data driven, become a data scientist, do it the right way. Gut inkling, this that is all crap. Get some data, get a good patent attorney, think about it, and get it done right. Yeah. and
I
and
mean, I
moat.
mean, uh,
Yeah,
moat. I mean, the most loved word in startup ecosystem. What's your moat? All right.
absolutely.
Yeah, just a couple of one or two rain checkpoints as well. I mean, absolutely loving the conversation, and I hope that's the sentiment is the same
Right.
on the other end as well.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we've been on call for approximately more than an hour, and I'm happy to go on, continue if you have as well.
I
Because
have a meeting at 3:30, but sure, we do have 12 minutes. Sure.
Yeah, because at the same time, this 5 minutes again is window is going to expire again. So I was wondering if we
Good.
should reconnect or we should try to wrap it up. So because I have a lot of other questions. I might want to have another call with you again. There's so many
Sure.
backup questions I do want to ask around. But I know
Happy to
you're
have.
also very busy. Uh, so uh, um, so I think let's just start it off. Let's do this. We let this call get expired, and maybe we'll just connect for another 5 minutes and so, and then we'll wrap up everything. I definitely want to squeeze every bunch of the conversation that we're having. It's really fun. Um,
That's really
so yeah, so we talked about a couple of things. There are one or two important areas I do definitely want to touch because these are very sensitive points. Can you give an estimate of ballpark investment do you think, one requires to start a company like yours? Like, accounting for all the costs, legal, operations, regulatory, hiring, acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. Like, because it's very opaque for a lot of people who does not come from this background, who haven't have industry exposure, right? So a lot of students who come around and talk about we want to start our own startup. And it might be nice to tell to you this time right now because I'm actually sort of consulting for a startup based out of IBAB right now. It's probably a junior. So
Oh,
right, right.
website.
Wow, so yeah, yes, exactly, yes. Yeah, I will say, right. So I'm consulting for him. So he wants to build up, I'm providing sort of computational skill set overall in terms of data science and artificial intelligence to sort of
Yeah.
build around his product and proposition. But what you would suggest would be reasonable investment that you think one should aim for? Uh,
I think it is super phase dependent. In the initial phases, you don't need. What would you need? What would you do with a lawyer? I mean, that's really no point, right? If you want to set up a company, you can really do it online in India in 20 grand or some sort, and in a day or two. So, first, till the time you have something on paper or physically or mentally or um, if if you have a thought process or if you have the basics for you want to rejoin, is it getting late?
Not region, but I actually want to say, I mean, let's make it very specific. At a stage where you want to build an experimental proof of concept, let's get to that part. Like, what would be a reasonable size ballpark estimate of the investment?
I would say because the real estate will take up a lot of chunk. Then you have to see if you're a BSL 1, BSL 2, BSL 3. That's very important in biotech. Genetic engineering toolkits are shit expensive. Chemicals you can go for really cheap ranges. That's okay. What we had a budget of around 1,50,000 per month to be able to do things at speed and we compromised in every aspect but tech was never compromised, and with the real estate and the kind of chemicals procurement, storing the microbes, buying the, I mean, agar itself is 5,000 rupees per kg, so that's a lot. So yeah, I think a lakh and a half per month for the first 6-8 months would take your work really fast and quick. But one thing people
So,
should think about: pre-order. Just pre-order. It takes so long for chemicals to be delivered in this country.
oh
Just
yeah, yes.
order. If you want to do an experiment next week, order a month ago, and then
Oh
that's going to
yeah,
work.
that's. I think there could be a whole different startup that can come into this particular space as well. I mean, I've been talking to one or two other people. We're just getting started. Younger people just the age of Webber itself, and they're like, oh,
Right.
it takes so much time to run and experiments here.
Yes.
I mean, so we're quoting a sort of a figure around you saying that a seed investment funding where you're not giving away too much equity for 15 lakhs. It seems to be a good place for a person to go and at least build a proof of concept, right? And
Uh,
and design a.
POC, yeah, POC I'm not sure of, but I feel like final leg of the POC, you can reach the final leg of the POC, because when it comes to say if you've done most of your experiments in a makeshift manner, cheaper kits and all that, the final experiment that becomes your POC, put some money in, get good quality ingredients, instruments, get it done. Yeah,
Basically the one that gets you through the regulatory barrier. I suppose that's the
that one,
one.
do not compromise there. Yes, do not
Yeah,
compromise there.
but the promising pre-POC stage you can get there in like 15 lakhs, which is actually significantly cheaper because to be honest, like in app-based companies raise far more money and then squander all of that onto Facebook ads.
Hey,
God
that's
help
really
me,
an
but
amazing.
I've been part of that story, which is a very very disappointing and disheartening thing sometimes because you realize, and I kept wondering, if this app-based companies are taking so much, how much a biotech companies do? And I talked to biotech founders, and I was talking to February Heal founder right a couple of years back, and it's like not a couple of years, sorry, a couple of months back, and he said the same thing, right? You probably will be able to get very far in like biotech 50 lakhs, and that's so much money. I'm like,
Yes.
you just go to the Core Mangla and talking about these people talking about AI and ML, and like what's gonna happen in 15
Millions
lakhs?
of dollars. For
Yeah, that's
what
like
joy?
there's very little money. I mean, I want to raise like 10 crores. So I was like, for what? Anyways,
For
this
what?
is less than a minute, so maybe let's just reconnect again, and I'll just let you go in like next 5 minutes or so overall. So let's just reconnect on this thing again. Thank you.